Our first guest is someone who embodies the spirit of this podcast, and his name is Shaun Gill from Concept Architectural Design Limited. And I'm very excited to welcome you. Welcome, Shaun, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
So, Shaun, let's first talk about you. So, how did you first get into architectural design, and what motivated you to join the industry?
Luck, I think, is the key word. I never envisaged I would do that, actually. I always wanted to be in the police all through school. Got to the age when I could apply, went through the tests and whatever, and my eyesight was not up to scratch at that time. So it totally changed my course, and I didn't know at all what I wanted to do. And I ended up luckily getting a job as an office junior in an architect's office in Dudley, just up the road. And it went from there, really. So I spent 12 months sort of photocopying drawings, driving to Birmingham, because this is the days before we had the glories of email. And I spent my days doing that, really. And it's just gone from there. So it started off as an office junior's role, copying drawings.
You're from before email?
We had one dial-up in the office, and I was the only one who could use it. But it was all printed, copied. I'd literally drive to Birmingham, deliver drawings, drive back, collect some more. And in between that, I would learn a bit of CAD work. So it was total potluck because, funnily enough, not going off tangent, but I got offered 2 jobs on the same day. Okay. A sales job, selling small connecting components for roof cladding, and this architectural job. I got offered them both on the same day, but the architectural office called me first. And because I was unemployed at the time, just left college, I snapped the hand off. So it's gone from there, really, a bit of potluck.
That's good. So in terms of concept, your company now, so where does the name for that come from? Obviously, it seems like quite a clear way in, but what's the ethos of the company? What do you try and do for your clients?
I suppose the name embodies what the job is in a way. It's creating the visual and the design of what people have kind of got, but they can't put it into physical structure or whatever. So they'll have a brief, and I thought concept was what every designer job needs. It needs that idea, it needs that visual, and it needs a concept to become something. So from conception to completion, which is a nice little tag which I probably should use, and I don't use, it came from there, really. I thought concept kind of covers what we do. Okay,
so what jobs do you typically take on then? So I know you do the residential stuff for us, so just explain a bit about the residential, and then I know you do commercial as well.
Yeah, everything, really. Not wanting to sound like a jack of all trades, but I suppose that a majority of our work is residential based, domestic, because we do a lot of work together. Yep. So domestic work, extensions, conversions, renovations, a lot of conversions. And that was sort of the start of the company, because from the background I'd built up before, I got a basis of clients and contacts and builders who were using that sort of work as their everyday work. But I'd also got other contacts which I've built up over that time, which have pushed me more into the commercial sector. So a bit of everything, but domestic residential was the start of it all, really. But so domestic-wise, it's anything that would alter a property. And then you've got, on the back of that, you've got new build properties. So they sort of run tandem, really, the principle behind layouts and design and appearance. And commercial's another arm of our business, which I really enjoy. But, it's harder work, I think, because it's more time intensive. So, but I like to have that mix, because you never know where the market's going to go. You could have commercial could quiet down during times when people are cash strapped. And it can also go the other way when people are not want to invest on the properties. They'll have more commercial work, so I like to keep that mix. So there's no specific sort of area I want to stick to full time. I like to do the mix, really. But
yeah, it's clear the premise of the podcast is about relationships. Mm-hmm. And from knowing you, I know you've got good relationships with a lot of people, with a lot of clients. Yeah. Why is that, do you think, important in your role?
I think it's everything. I think relationships with people is everything. It's in every business you have to sell yourself, no matter what it is, and you probably agree with that. But especially with what I do, because it's really personal to people if you work on their house, especially that sort of part of the work, not the commercial side as well, because people want their workplaces to be important, comfortable and whatever, but when you're working on someone's house, they want to feel comfortable with who they're allowing to work on the house. It's probably the biggest thing they'll ever own, the most expensive thing they'll ever own, and they're allowing you to alter that and create something different. And there's a lot of money involved as well. So I think it's important for people to trust what you do. And it's also important for you to have connections, which I know is your ethos of the podcast, but the connections with other consultants, trades, whatever, because you're offering that package. And I know you're very much getting to that position with your company where you can offer a package, design and build. We can work together. I can recommend consultants, structural engineers. I've got good relationships with planners and building inspectors. That's really important as well, because those are two key elements that you have to go through with every build. So it's vital. I think if you haven't got that connection with the customer, one, you're never going to get the job, or you're going to be distant from the client and they're never going to feel comfortable. That's the main connection. Once you've got the job, the connection with the planners comes in, because I've got to sell this to the planners. And then the connection with building control, they've got to trust that I'm doing a good job. And you do build that up, and you get those connections with building control is a good one, because they'll know you, and you do repeat work with them, and they'll trust that the information that you give them is going to be accurate. So I think it's everything. I think connections is everything with the client, with planning, with building control, and then the follow-on from that is with builders and trades. Because if I can recommend you for a job, I trust that you'll do a good job, and it all feeds back. We're all like a network of connected people.
Yeah. So what makes a good relationship with a builder then specifically? So you've gone through the others, which are really important.
Yeah.
What do you think makes a good relationship with a builder? What do you think you need there?
It's a trust issue. 100% it's a trust issue, because if we're talking about the domestic sort of work, it's a massive trust issue, because what I offer, yes, I offer sort of help along the way, but I'm not going to be on site every day. I trust that builder's going to take that design, going to take the information, going to take the advice on building control, going to follow the planning drawings. There's a lot of trust in that I give to a builder in recommending that builder. Just like the client trusts that builder to do the job. So I think it's all about trust, really. And that just builds up along the way. And it works both ways. It works both ways. I'm sure when you recommend me for something, I'll recommend anybody else, or I recommend a structural engineer to do something. It's all trust. I think the whole industry really is heavily based on trust.
Yeah. So what are the common? I know from a building perspective, the common challenges that you get when you bring the concept to the drawing to fruition. Mm-hmm. What do you think the challenges within the project? What do you usually face? What kind of things can come up, and how can you solve them?
Planning is a huge hurdle, and I think I'm not going to knock the planning system. Probably not the right place to do it. But when you get a brief off a client, most people aren't out there wild dreams. They just want something that's going to work for them. And if you're working on the standard kind of property, there's only so much you can do by way of extending it. But the planning hurdle is getting more difficult, because it seems that you're trying to. It almost feels like you're trying to fight a losing battle in a roundabout way. Even if you're not doing something wild and wacky, there's so much to consider, and that's a challenge. I think planning, I think, is becoming more of a challenge, because although we're pushed as a country now by the government to build, I keep saying you don't always get that feedback from planners. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge hurdle first, getting a planning permission in. I don't think people realise how difficult that can be to just get that through planning, and sometimes it's a huge victory to get a planning.
Well, a client of mine, not a shared client, a client of mine's looking at that at the moment, and they can't seem to get something through planning, which seems so straightforward. And it's just because it's slightly out of the norm of that road, and not massively. I mean, there's examples of streets away that have done pretty much the same as what they want to do, and they just can't get through. And it's now at planning consultant stage. Yeah. Do you want to explain a bit about what that stage can involve?
Yeah, planning consultants, I use them a lot. for contentious applications, if I think something's going to be a little contentious. It's a shame when you've got something like that when you don't think it is contentious, but you end up going down that route, because it's not the cheapest route in the world. Yeah. It's time consuming. It's frustrating for everybody. But planning consultants are really important. There's a couple of companies I use and recommend. But a lot of them are ex-planners. They know the policies. They know really what should be presented to the council.
So there's nothing, because obviously the new government have changed some things now, or they want to make that easier. Is there nothing? Is that still to come through? Where are we at with those changes?
I think so. I think there's still a lot to come through, and there's still changes to come. There should be, I think. Yeah. But over recent years, they have relaxed the planning laws. You can do quite a lot now without planning. You still have to go down the route of getting lawful certificates, but the process is easier in that sense. I suppose that the biggest problem with planning I've got is the consistency, because there's so many things you can do. You can extend, you'll know a lot of this, single story. You stand at 3 metres on a semi-detached, or you can go 6 metres under a large ham extension scheme. People don't realise that, but you can do 2-story side in some councils without planning. So there's a relaxation there that's really helped, and there's still a process for me to go through to get that certificate, but that's helped. But then you've also got the other applications that don't quite fall into that bracket, but should be a rubber stamp, and they're not. And there's now consistency. Yeah. And you get that as well with new builds. A lot of councils now are cutting down on the backland type developments, which I get if it's getting overcrowded. But there's some backland sites that will never be anything else. There's an access already there. It was an old garage site or whatever, and all the garages have gone. And yes, somebody might want to put a bungalow on there, and they're trying to move away from that. But what else is that land going to be? And if the access is there, the principle's there that vehicles can go up and down, you can fit something on there. But at the moment, that's becoming a big no-no. And a lot of people approach me with backland developments, and I have to advise them that it's unlikely that you're going to get something.
Might not get to, yeah.
So it's the inconsistency, I think, is what I'm trying to get to.
Well, we've seen it loads of times with different authorities where some people say one thing and other authorities say another. So that collaboration with the planners and knowing the planners and having that personal relationship, I think, does definitely help, because then you can almost have a candid discussion about why you think that should go through, rather than a regulatory one where you're saying, well, it meets this regulation. Yeah. I had that example once where we was doing 2-story rear extension, and then the planners just wouldn't allow it. The second story, they're saying it's too overbearing. And there was no complaints from the neighbours. They were askew of each other, so it wasn't really overbearing or making any impact. But they made us put up the first floor back 250 mil. It's like, so basically it just created this really awkward space, and it meant they had to have another steel in there to support it and so forth. It's such a weird, odd decision. Yeah. But just unless we went to a planning consultant, and they seemed to make it for no reason other than, and I think they said something like it made them feel better. And it's like almost like their own feeling about the project rather than what was actually right. You know, it didn't seem to make sense there, but because I didn't have that relationship with that certain planner, I mean, there's nothing we could do really, or felt like nothing I can do unless we get a consultant in.
Yeah, having that relationship with planners is a huge benefit if you can get it. And I have got that with a lot of planners. I've been doing this now for 25 years or more. And you automatically build up those relationships. And it really does help, because if you can pick up the phone and say, you know, what's the issue with this? Can we just tweak it here, tweak it there? A conversation over the phone is worth 1 million emails. And you can't always present yourself as well with an email. And I think if you've got that relationship to pick up the phone with the planner, have an informal chat about it, take their point, they take my point, and you get to some sort of middle ground, which 9 times out of 10 you can find. Going back to the planning consultant issue there, the more contentious things, that they're worth their weight in gold, I think, because they have that connection as well. So it's like a connection of a connection. I might be working for a council that I've never worked with before, and have a slight issue or feel like it's not going to be the easiest application. I can contact a planning consultant who's got that connection. So it's connections within connections as well as not. It doesn't have to be direct. It can be through other people. So it's so important if you want success in getting things approved.
Yeah, definitely really helps. Going back to the design stage, thinking about the people who might be listening. So when you design, I know you're really careful about the design of how you remodel the house. So if we go back to that, what is the process if someone's listening and wants to remodel the house? Where do you think you need an architect, and where do you think you might need just a builder? At what stage do you think you're really important in a house remodel, say? So maybe knocking through kitchen, dining, and all the alterations that we see. Do you think that's a stage which you should get involved in, or is it just extending properties?
I think there's benefits in any project to have an architectural input, but it's not essential. If it's very clear to the client what they want, if they literally just want to knock a wall through from the lounge to the kitchen, and they know they want the kitchen to go around the one wall or the other, you might not need that drawing out and designed. You could just contact a builder like yourself. You might even give me a call and say, what do I do here? I don't have to get involved. So I don't think it's essential.
Yeah.
But in terms of remodeling a house, 100% it's essential.
Can you talk about because I know for me, you've got a unique approach in the way that you design for people. So can you just talk about how you feel about when you're designing? You've kind of touched upon it, but how you feel about when you've got the privilege, because I think it's a privilege for building for people. Yeah. You've got the privilege of designing someone's living space. Yeah. What's your approach to that?
Pressure. It's a massive pressure in a way, because, like I said before, you're dealing with someone's most valuable asset, usually the house, and it's so important because we all spend time in our houses every day. So design in that sense is really important. Actually, there's I haven't planned this. I just thought of this actually. There's a famous architect years ago. He said that give him a married couple who've just got married, happy as can be, and I will design them a house to ensure that they get divorced in 1 year.
Okay.
That's how important he considered design to be. Because he believed if you design that house to a way that puts them in situations where they're going to have conflict, or it's not going to flow, or one's going to...
I'm going to put you on the spot now. I want to know who that was.
I don't know. I wish I knew, because I've come across really intelligent. But I'll find it out and I'll let you know. But he said that because he realised how important it was. But it can work the other way. Obviously, it's supposed to work the other way. You're supposed to get a house that probably doesn't quite work, and you have to make it work for that couple. So the pressure side from me really is understanding what they want. And I say they because it usually is a couple, or it's a family, or an extended family. And it's understanding all of those needs and putting that into a design that it's easy for anybody to, I'll draw that for you. Anybody can go around and I'll measure your house and I'll draw that for you. And it will work and it will stand up and you'll build it if you want to, according to the drawings. I know you're very different to some builds and you'll input and say, this, not happy with this, what about this? Which a lot of builders don't do. But if you just go there and build it as a box and then they furnish it and fit it out and, well, this doesn't work. I can't work in that corner, my desk doesn't fit over there.
Well, like you similarly hate to design something that doesn't work, I'd hate to build it. And where we get to see, again, a bit more privilege, is we get to see the result. So I know sometimes you might visit a project, but we get to feel kind of what that does for the families. I mean, with design, going back to your point, you're saying usually it's families extending. We actually do a lot of projects that are just for individuals who want the bigger space to adapt to their living. I know built libraries for people in certain cases and that kind of thing. Who recently done one for an individual who wanted, a tutor room on the front of the house because they do private tuition and things like that. So many reasons to adapt. But the reason why I got back to that is I know you're careful in your design, and sometimes we pick up architectural designs, and like I said, I look at them. We build a lot, so it's like that just isn't suitable. And I think I've run this one by you where they'd remodelled the house, they'd built an extension, but then they'd put in the centre of the home, they'd put a kid's playroom, in essence.
Right, yeah.
And I think I sent this to you, and when I asked them what do they need, and one of the questions I always ask of clients is, what do they actually want from the project? It's so important to gauge that.
It is.
And it's like, but they put the playroom in the middle, and what the client actually needed was a downstairs utility. And he works at home, and he wanted a home office. And they'd said the home office can go in the playroom. He's like, that just doesn't make sense. You know, he's on video calls and things like that.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
whole layout just did not work.
Yeah.
And I know you're a lot careful than that. So that's
Yeah.
Is that just questioning, or how do you try and gauge that from the client?
It's difficult sometimes because some people are quite set in their ways in what they want, and I can see it doesn't work, and I have to try and wheel them down this road to convince them that this is the way to do it. But not that it's got to be my way or the highway. I tend, as you know, I'll do 2, 3, 4, 5 different schemes for people.
You did too many for me.
Yeah.
And you confused me.
That can be a problem, yeah. But sometimes it highlights that what they want is wrong. Yeah. And I'll always do that as your option one. Option one's always going to be what the client tells me they want. Yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's fine, it's straightforward. But 9 times out of 10, I'll do another couple of options and I'll say, actually, I never thought of this. And that's why the initial meeting is really important, because you take that brief, and a bit like that really, you could say, I want a home office. Yeah, it could fit in that corner over there, but there's no natural light. Yeah. You know, you're a mile away from the toilet, and you don't want to keep nipping.
You're tripping over kids' toys when you're trying to work or on a phone call, you know.
Yeah, you're right next to the playroom or kid's bedroom. He's got his PlayStation on and whatever. And it's about understanding all those things. A lot of it's experience, obviously. You know, you learn things as you go, and we all learn from mistakes. I'm sure there's mistakes in design as well as building that you have to learn from. But it's just understanding, I think, what people want, and then showing them how to get there. And it's not always the way they think.
Well, I think you'd be surprised that sometimes I get called and it's like, well, what do you want? And they actually don't know. They just want an extension, or they know they need more room. And then obviously they've not thought about it. Sometimes you've thought about it and they've drawn it themselves, you know, and they really know what they want. I guess then trying to articulate that out of somebody who just wants more space is like, it's quite difficult, because what do you want the space for, you know? That's the most difficult, when people think they know what they want. Because the people who come to you and say, I want this amount of rooms, I've not got a clue how to get there. That's easier for me, because I've got a bit of a blank canvas, free rein to do what I want to get there. Whereas the people who are adamant, I want a bedroom there and a bedroom here, and it's definitely going to be big enough to fit all this stuff in I want, but it doesn't. And I have to try and convince them. Those are harder jobs than people who've got blank canvas. Do you ever come across the people who can't really even conceptualise when it's drawn out for them, the 2D drawings? Yeah, that's a really common thing. Yeah, really common. It's most jobs. You tend to get, if you're working for couples or whatever, you can get one who totally understands it all, and the other one hasn't got a clue. So what helps is 3D modelling. That really helps. It helps everybody really. I suppose. Picture speaks 1,000 words, but a 2D picture sometimes is not selling it or not making it available to understand. A 3D model, you can't really argue with that really, because it's a visualisation of scale and space, and it really helps people. Well, it helps us from a building perspective, because the 3D modelling, when you see, I mean, the last example we did, 2-storey side extension, they did 3D model of the bathroom. They realised what was on the architectural drawings, just the window was too large. Yeah. You know, and it didn't work for the space, because they wanted a cupboard here and again, I don't know why the architect in that situation drew that window so large, but it highlighted the point. So without that model, we would have probably just built that window. Yeah. Well, we would have, because you always build to the design, and then it would have been too large. So that got picked up really early, which would have been quite a costly build mistake really, if we'd rather than infill and change the window design to suit. Well, again, it's all about making the space work, because it's fine putting a window in because you know you need natural light. But you might think, well, I'll put that 4-foot window in because there's a 4-foot window in the room next door and it's going to look out nice on the elevation. Yeah. But if that only needs a 3-foot window or a 2-foot window, because then you can get your cupboards in, you can get your shower cubicle in. It's all about understanding the space. Well, what we come across quite a lot in that is in bedrooms, you're doing, again, 2-storey side extensions, and then you know the wardrobe's naturally going to fit on the one side, then the window can't be central to the room, or is too large, and then, you know, the wardrobes will be oversailing the window. Yeah. So, and we had that going back to the library example, where he always wanted his library and the bookshelf, and the window was too large. Yeah. And we picked that up early though, because I was like, you know, that there's not enough depth there in the window. Yeah. But obviously, you've explained that now. So that's the concept of trying to marry everything up visually from external of the property.
It's caring more than just doing a drawing for someone.
Yeah.
It's actually thinking about what they want. But like you've just highlighted there, a lot of builders wouldn't. I'm not knocking builders. Obviously, they'd pay to go and build a drawing out, really. If it's dimensioned and it's agreed, why wouldn't they just build it? So it's good that you have that forethought to have a look at these things. But yeah, that's really common. Because it's easy to bang a window in the middle of a room. You think, oh, I'll sit there in the middle of the wall.
Yeah.
But then you come to put your wardrobes up and it sticks over the window reveal.
Makes the room not work, yeah.
And it spoils the client's plans because they might think, I want wardrobes all down that wall.
Okay, I'm going to ask a quite contentious question here now then. And we might fight over or squabble over it a bit, which you look like you've gone to the gym a bit too much, so we try not to fight over it. But it's a chicken and egg question.
Yeah.
Who do you think the client, someone, say, extending a home, who do you think should come first, the architect or the builder?
The architect.
Yeah, I knew I was going to argue over this. Okay, so why do you think the architect should come first? In that, so I'll go to one every day really, but they know they want an extension. They want to make the kitchen bigger or something like that, or another bedroom. Why do you think the architect first instead of the builder?
I'll tell you why an architect, but I'll also tell you why I think a builder's important.
Okay.
But I'll do the architect first. Because a builder's got to deliver it, haven't they? They've got to deliver the product at the end of the day. But a builder might not always understand what they need to deliver, and they could guide the client totally in the wrong direction. They could say, oh yeah, that's fine, I can build that for you, of course I can. But it might not even be achievable. Again, going back to the client's brief, if the client's briefs for X amount of rooms, yes, you could go and say, yeah, I'll build that for you, it's fine. You almost get a job off that. But you'd find out further down the line, or it might be something that's never going to get planning permission, or going to be a really contentious planning application. And the client might think, oh great, builder's said he can build it, that's great, we'll go and get our architect now. And they could have maybe paid a fee or whatever, or paid a deposit for something, and then an architect comes along and says, well actually, you're never going to get planning for this. So I think in that sense, it's like everything really, everything, another famous saying, everything has to be designed. Whatever is used is designed. It always starts with the design. So I think every process when it comes to delivering something starts with the design. You can't just go and a new chocolate bar.
Yeah.
You can't just get someone in the factory to just bang out a chocolate bar. Someone's got to plan how it's going to look, how it's going to taste, the ingredients.
Well, they could, but they might not get a very good product out of it.
Exactly.
But, they could have a go.
It's probably a bad example, but
I think that's probably where you're right in a sense, in that it does depend on the individual. Now, I know I've got people like yourself, again, going back to the connections thing. Yeah. So if I go and see a project and I understand a lot of the regulations, what you can and can't do and stuff, but not all of them, not obviously certainly not to your level. But then because I've got the connections, if I'm a bit unsure and I need to guide someone to wherever they can do it, then I can always pick up the phone and call you and just say, can you do this? And I've done that on many occasions with you and several others. So I think maybe it's because I'm so confident in my ability that I should come first, because, and I can give a better, maybe, estimation of build costs and things like that, to say, this might cost this much, this might cost this much, or this option might cost this much. And I feel I do that quite a lot. But you couldn't trust, I guess, every builder to have that kind of capability.
Yeah, I think
that's care, like we talked about earlier, or care to actually want to know what the client wants.
I think that's the thing, you can't label everybody the same.
Yeah.
You're going to get very good builders, average builders, poor
So
builders.
you reckon there's better architects than builders?
there's good and bad in all.
I know.
You can have things that design that just don't work. And I know we had a conversation on the way, and I'll let you leave that for another podcast, but things can get designed.
I've had a few of them off the same architect, to be honest, where the project just doesn't work. And we've been to contractual stage, and just, quite enough design and stuff. But when we've got the structure engineer there, there's kind of steels just hanging up in mid-air and things, and the design that the structure engineer, the architect did just doesn't work. So not everyone's the same. You're right in that,
But I always think architect, and I'll stand by that because I think it's always going to be the start. And like I said,
Architects or me, so one or the other.
I know, I'll let you hear first. But what I was going to say, and you touched on it there, is the reason a builder is good is because a builder is very switched on with prices, and a lot of architects aren't, and I probably aren't really. And I learn a lot of that from you and other builders and contractors when I go to tender.
Yeah.
But I could go somewhere, and a client could go to me, I've got a budget of whatever. Or they might not even give me a budget. They might say, I want to create this. And I could come up with all these weird and wonderful ideas, and they pay me to design it all before we even engage with the builder. And that could be something that's way out of the budget.
Yeah.
And coming into the budget might not be enough for them. So on day one, you as a good builder who would think about it, could say, I've got your brief, but that's never going to work for that money. Whereas they could have spent X amount of pounds with me to get to that point.
Yeah.
So that's where a builder would come in. So I think if anybody can offer a design and build package, like you can, obviously, that's probably the all-round best solution. Because even if you're stood there with the client, not knowing 100% the answer, you can give someone a call, or you can just go away and go back and give them the feedback. You haven't got to commit yourself to an architect first, and then find a builder, then find this, and then find that. You can kind of get it all in one.
Yeah, I guess I like to do something that's probably not the typical. It's not a builder's job, as you said before. You know, a builder's job is probably just to build.
Yeah.
Whereas, like the property I went to today had several options to create a bedroom. You know, and they wanted a bigger bedroom for their son. So it was like across the garage, in the garage, rear extension. You know, looking at all these different options.
Yeah.
And in terms of price, because they've got to go and then get a mortgage and things like that, so it is a big commitment.
Yeah.
So, although, because it does need planning permission, because they've already got an extension, so on a permitted development it can't be done. So, but I could say, you know, all else fails, this is what I think your top end budget would be if you want that extension.
Yeah.
So it's like then they can create that thought, can't they?
Yeah, yeah.
But unless you're working collaboratively, like I said, so before you then, I guess you've got to design it, but before that goes to other expenses maybe, then they can get a guide price
Yeah, of course.
on that.
Yeah.
But that's where I think a builder like me first.
A good builder, I agree. Good edge.
Could just about do it, yeah. So looking at the future then, so in terms of going forward, so, you know, what are the future trends? Because I've seen some come and go in terms of what people want. So what are you designing mostly for people? If we talk domestic home improvements, what do you think are the desirable features in houses at the moment?
Open plan is a big thing. Everybody wants walls out.
Yeah.
Open plan. I think it's this idea of this family living, everybody in the same sort of space.
I think I might create a company called RSJ a day or something like that, because everyone's knocking out walls.
Yeah, that is the way it's going.
Can you copyright that?
Yeah.
That's mine, RSJ a day.
Yeah, it's that's one of the main things really, because it's that feel of kitchen, living, dining, kids playing, views over the garden. It's where all these bifold doors comes in, the natural light, the views. I say everybody, a lot of people are going down that route. And I can understand why. It's moving away from the traditional lounge, dining, kitchen, that sort of separate space. People define the spaces more now with furniture and things like that rather than walls.
Right, yeah.
Well, it's always been walls, hasn't it? You know, you've got your lounge, and you come out of the lounge, you go into the dining space, you come out, you go into the kitchen.
I hadn't thought about it like that, but with open plan, they define the area, so you create the space, and they define almost like a secondary, living room. And
you still define the space, but it could be a sofa.
I never thought about it.
It could be an L-shaped sofa that backs onto your kitchen, but it creates the lounge because you're facing the TV or whatever. So it's the same mentality. You're still creating the spaces, but you've got this open plan feel, which a lot of people are going towards now. It's light, it's airy, it's modern. And
it's that family space, isn't it? You know, where family. So traditionally, you don't have dinner in a separate room. Yeah. You want to all be together.
That's it, yeah. And it's a social thing as well. And I don't know if it's what the trend is really, but sort of people's lifestyles are different. I think now people have people around. They don't go out for meals and pubs and stuff. We know pubs are dying off a little bit, and people are very happy in the house now. Maybe COVID had an impact on that. I don't know. keeping people in.
Well, with COVID, we started putting walls back up.
Yeah,
So instead of taking them out, we compartmentalise every family member.
Yeah.
So that change was short-lived, but especially people, working from home.
Yeah.
So people did want those walls back up. They did want to create the office spaces and things like that. But
that's a great point. Because that is a new thing. I need a home office. Even if they don't work all the time from home, people like this idea of flexibility, the hybrid working. And apparently, during COVID, loads of people started new businesses. It was like a huge thing. It really gave people a kick to start a new business. And a lot of those businesses start from home. So that's a big criteria now. People want an office, even if it's as big as this corner, just something there they can work. And that has to be factored in there. Thinking back sort of 10 years or more, hardly anybody had an home office, really. If you wanted to work from home, you just get your laptop on the kitchen table and away you go.
But in the commercial space then, because I know a lot of people, a lot of businesses have left or downsized their, their commercial retail, commercial estate. So what have you seen happening with those? People tend to turn them into residential, or have you not seen too much decline in commercial?
Yeah, I think there was a big decline. I think everybody panicked during COVID. I think commercial landlords, big style, would have panicked because it never looked like people would want to go back to the office. I think people are more now, but what it has created is more vacant office buildings. But going back to the planning laws now, the planning laws have changed on that scale where you can convert an empty office into residential without theoretical planning permission. You just need a prior notification. There's certain criteria you need to meet. Square meterage for the flats, parking, and whatever, depending on the location. Even 10 centres, you won't need any parking, so it's that even more flexibility. But so those vacant buildings now and the relaxation of the planning laws have pushed those buildings more towards being suitable for residential rather than out and out commercial as they were before. So back to when I sort of started work, there was a lot of big offices around, and I think people have scaled them down a bit. I think people still like the office atmosphere, but that hybrid issue has allowed people to share desks in a way.
Yeah.
So you hot desk and you work from home 3 days a week. And
I think the problem, going back to the premise of the podcast, is if you're working from home, it is hard to make that connection, isn't it? I know we've got all these tools and stuff now to do that, but it's still not the same as being in physical presence, and having that kind of general conversation. I think that's what people miss, especially such a long period at home. So that's what drove people back into offices. Certainly, I couldn't sit and stare at four walls all day. I don't know about you.
I like the bit of freedom to move around. I've got an office, I work from home sometimes, but I think 100% of one or the other can get a bit stale. So it's nice now we've got a bit of a mix. Yeah, and I think people's lifestyles are working around it, and so that has shifted your question before, I suppose, about the design changes. That's shifted people's thinking into creating a bit of working space. But the most important thing is creating this family living bit to make it work.
So they don't get divorced.
So they don't get divorced. But if somebody wanted to design it so they get divorced in 1 year,
all right, okay,
I'll have a go.
I'd be interested to see that. The divorce design. I wonder if we could sell that.
Divorces, couldn't I, over the years? Without even knowing. I'll have to phone people up and see if
you have to go back over your designs, see, and prove the model. Or disprove, hopefully.
Or disprove,
in terms of construction methods and materials and things like that, are you seeing anything new? I know that you've got timber frame houses and stuff going up. I just worry that some of this becomes, like the no fines concrete and stuff, and that kind of post-war kind of. I'm not. We don't build too much of that. We build some of the the SIPS panels, extensions and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that material's okay. Is there anything new or anything that you see coming out in that field?
SIPS panels is a good example. I think they're good. I think everything's got its place. I think we're getting pushed too much into this energy efficiency. I know global warming is a big thing and a whole different subject altogether.
That's definitely another podcast.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm a massive believer in how important people are saying it is. Yeah. And I think there's better ways of sorting it than we are. I think this push towards solar panels and all that, which solar panels are fine, but they're only so much they can generate. Yeah. And where's all that coming from? It's space to put them, and all this. I think we've
I
been pushed so
like the
far.
idea of solar on new roofs. I don't see the harm in it, and the technology is getting better. So I do think that.
There's some excellent products in terms of making a roof look good with solar. Some of the first examples, when you've got this panel sticking
So deep.
inside the shoebox on top of the roof, those are really bad. But
You can, the inset ones they inset into the roof line. Yeah, look pretty nice.
yeah, I think we're getting a bit, as an industry, we're getting a bit obsessed though with energy efficiency.
Yeah.
And I think the hurdles you have to jump through in terms of making SAP calculations work, EPCs, these thermal models and stuff, they're all important. Yeah, they are, of course they are. And everybody wants to live in an energy efficient home in a way, and we all want to do our bit, but we're getting a bit obsessed. And I think some of the products are going a bit too far. I mean, the insulation levels that we're putting in some properties now, it's extortionate really. You're losing space in rooms, you're costing the client an absolute fortune. Yeah, you're saving heating and whatever, but there must be a point where you've saved enough in a roundabout way. And what has never really made much sense to me is you can have a house, a big house, and you extend the back, but that small extension on the back is insulated to the absolute hilt, but the rest of the house is leaking energy like crazy.
Yeah.
So there should be a bit of...
Well, we've seen that, especially on older properties, like Georgian period properties, where we had one where the family, well, it was just a couple, they actually moved into the extension because the house was so cold and there's no way of insulating, without putting the external EPS boards on there, which again ruins the character. So we built the extension on the back, underfloor heating, all that. And I mean, it almost thermally insulated the house, but because it was warm, everything got moved into the bed. I went back round to take a video, and literally there was living in there, which shows how poor some houses are. So I understand 100%. The mistakes that have been made, but I agree with you. It's gone a bit too far.
There's a point.
But there's a limit where actually insulation actually becomes useful.
Well, it's up to a certain point.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but the other thing that you almost touched on there was the character of houses as well.
Yeah.
We can't spoil, I don't think, the character of certain buildings which don't get built that way anymore because of cost issues or no interest maybe, and different styles. But it's a shame to lose traditional features just because we have to insulate that room to a certain level. I think there's got to be a bit more flexibility.
I certainly wouldn't be putting insulated panels on the outside and rendering, old Georgian properties.
No, it's a real shame. It's a real shame when that happens. Yeah, but in terms of new materials, there's loads of good stuff around that. These green roofs and all that, I haven't really got much into that, but green roofs and all that sort of stuff, it's great ideas and there's some real clever stuff going on. So we'll see what the future brings, I suppose.
Okay, so I think we're coming to an end. So before we wrap up, then, if we then go back to giving some helpful tips to customers looking to redevelop the homes, looking to extend, what was kind of like one piece of advice be, or two maybe?
Contact the architect first.
Okay.
No, I think...
a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one, yeah. I think due diligence, speak to more than one person, get some ideas. Because if you can put all your eggs in one basket, then that can be the wrong basket sometimes, whether that's a builder or an architect or whatever. There's a lot around that can really spoil your plans and waste your money. So I think bit of due diligence, bit of background, forward planning for yourself, but then after that, you've just got to kind of trust the process, because if you've got the right people, who've got the right connections, going back to where you started really, then it will work. It will all work, and I think that's the main thing. I think getting the right people. There's only so much a client can do, because I don't know anything about cars. If I walk into a car showroom, I might not like how it looks, but I ain't got a clue on performance and which one's the best for me and my kids and whatever. So I trust that at some point someone's going to say, this is the car for you. So at some point you've got to hand that trust over, and that's big style of building. You've got to trust that architect walking through the door is going to come up with the ideas based on your brief, and that architect and the builder together are going to deliver your product at the end of the day. I think so. There's only so much you can do. Bit of due diligence at the start, ask the right questions. And then just question something halfway through if it's not right, because a lot of people will go, oh, he said that's okay, and we'll run with it. I'm not sure, it doesn't look right on the drawing, or he's building that wall down, I'm not quite sure. Sometimes it's okay to ask a question halfway through. Well,
there are groups online, isn't there, where you can support, where it can help that, building groups and so forth, where you can post a question and say, is this right? And then there are people on there who don't know whether it's right or wrong and give an opinion, but there are people on there who do give good opinions and say maybe you need to question this and that. So there is help if you look for it. But you're right, definitely should question. And because again, it's understanding, isn't it? It's like if I was watching someone rebuild the engine of my car, I wouldn't have a clue, but you'd still want to what is that part?
Yeah, there might be some common sense.
If something doesn't make sense,
Exactly, just ask the question. If they prove why they're doing it, that's absolutely fine. And no tradesperson or consultant should ever be upset because someone's asked a question. In some ways, like you just explain why, and that's it. So I think that as a client, if we're relaying this video to clients and potential customers, just be brave enough to ask a question. I think that's the main thing, really.
Yeah.
And trust the process.
But it's quite hard for people, isn't it? To ask that question, especially when they don't know or realise. But that's where the relationship comes in, isn't it? So is this right? And be confident enough with the person they've hired to ask those questions. I've seen that happen where the builder asks questions, the builder clams up or doesn't want to answer and becomes a bit standoffish. That's obviously that's a red flag. And I've got some videos around that where I highlight some of the things that where you could pick up and ask the questions. Because we are talking a lot of money on the line, so any builder should be able to have that kind of communication. I think that wraps up. Unless there's anything else you want to add. The other profession I was going to bring into that is building control officers, because I see a lot of people not using those properly. So the building control officer, I'll let you explain that role in terms of the project. What does building control officer bring?
Well, usually once you've got your planning permission, which most developments need, you can't build or start anything without instructing a building inspector. And that building inspector will make intermittent visits just to make sure that the builder on site is undertaking work that was designed and to make sure it's completed properly. So it's a massively important role. And they're a go-between as well, because I'll liaise with building inspectors every day to agree different details, a bit like the installation values that we talked about before. They have to be fed all the information, the SAPs, the EPCs, the structural engineers' calculations. The building control is one of the most important because they should pick up faults, they should pick up problems before they even happen, really, just by how the job started. I'm not sure the ins of how it's going at the moment, but I've been told that building control officers now are independently audited and they carry their own risks personally, which might change the industry a little bit, because I think if they're protected by their company, I think their view might be a little bit different than if they're independently audited. So you probably highlight how important that role is, because it's taking responsibility for what's going on and making sure that what's been designed is being implemented on site, because they're not there every day, just like I wouldn't be there every day. The builder's there every day. So yes, there's trust in that builder from everybody to build it, but there's somebody there checking to make sure that's done.
I'll probably touch on it in another episode or when I speak to a building control officer, but the one thing I'd say to clients about that is the building control officer's there on behalf of the client, not the builder. I think some people get that relationship wrong. The client pays for building control. And I think sometimes, and I'll debate this with the building control officers, sometimes that almost gets lost. And so the communication isn't good between building control and the client. And the client needs to know that they are paying them. And so if they want an update on the project, they can call building control and ask them. So on an inspection point, if you've not got a report, which happens quite a lot at local authority level, call them, say, how did that go? Or what's the latest on the project, and then use them as the professional that they are, and get that feedback from them if it's not coming out, or do the inspection, be proactive and do the inspection with the inspector. I know a lot of time we as the builder call building control and set the time and date. But if you ask your builder when that's going to be and walk around the building control and ask them, I think it's just another layer to make sure that everything, the project's going okay, a bit more proactive role. I know there's a trust there, but
there's no set rule that the inspections have to be booked by the builder. They can be booked out by the client, and in some ways maybe you might think it's better if the builder's not even there on site in a roundabout way, because the building control officer might feel a bit more free to talk and be open and not feel like they're contradicting the builder or questioning the builder, but at the same time explaining the project to the client. So that is potentially a good way of doing it. Although it is good to have the builder there because they can agree details and whatever. So the two can work, but yet clients shouldn't be afraid of, again, asking questions, speaking to those different people. And building control is one of the key ones, really.
Yeah, I just think it's another person that people don't realise they can leverage.
Yeah,
you know, and just ask them the question and then get some update on it, an expert opinion on the project, really.
Yeah.
And they can ask those questions as well. You know, the builder's done this. Is that okay? Or
yeah, of course. And if it's all yes, that's fine. Yes, that's fine. Yes, that's fine. It's peace of mind at the end of the day.
So they've got a lot of level of support there. That isn't just the builder. I don't think people know that they can call on. You know, they could call you and say, "This is happening.
Yeah.
Is this okay?" Building control. You know, so there's the professionals around them. It's just I think the clients need to know that they can leverage that.
Yeah,
obviously, they've got a build they can trust, but you know, if they feel the need or if they see some red flags and some things they could look out for, that's just a bit of knowledge that they can do.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Okay. All right. So, anything else you want to add? So, I'll let you introduce your company and how people can get in touch with you. So what's the easiest way? So some architectural services, they're considering extension because we know the architect comes first. So
100%.
What we're thinking. So if you want to introduce your company to the camera.
Yeah, I can do it to the camera.
And how to get in touch.
Yeah, well, the company's Concept Architectural Design Limited. You can get in touch by telephone on 07809 580 481. Or there's email, which is concept-designs@outlook.com. And the usual social media sites. I've got a little bit of something on there, but nothing too special. My time is all on focusing on the design, really, getting that right. My social media can follow. So yeah, get in touch for anything, domestic, residential, commercial. Happy to help.
Okay, so his name's Shaun Gill.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. It's been insightful.
Cheers.
And if you want to get in touch with us, my name's Andy Steadman, introduced top of the podcast. And my company's Home Extension Specialist Limited. And the best way to get in touch with us, if you go to homeextend.co.uk, all our contact details are on there. And you can also book in a free home visit. We serve clients in the West Midlands area. I know Shaun serves clients countrywide and nationwide. How far do you go? Out to Hebrides or?
I'm not scared to go.
Okay, not scared to travel.
Nationwide, yeah. Anywhere.
Okay, so anywhere for Shaun, but we can only serve clients in the West Midlands. So anyone get in touch. But there will be content on our social media channels that will be appropriate across nationwide. So yeah, feel free to follow us. I've got a LinkedIn page. That's just my personal name, Andy Steadman. If you search for me, happy to connect with people. And if anyone wants to be on this future episodes of podcasts, please get in touch. So thank you very much, Shaun, and I'm sure we'll speak again.
Thank you.